We have a split in Europe between numbers of countries. You have countries who are still receiving migrants and refugees and who are open to them, and like Germany. And you have countries who are aware that they might get troubles, like countries like Austria, where they're still welcoming, but where they are now reducing the numbers of migrants that lead into the country. But I think the big problem are really those countries who simply tell that they don't want to have any migrants. This makes it very, very difficult because we know that migrants will tend to come. And if I say migrants, then this, of course, is an expression that also includes real asylum seekers on the one hand, but we all know that people go away from Africa, from the Middle East, because the living conditions are bad and because they see no future, especially those in the refugee camps. So this is something we have to recognize, that we have no unanimity in Europe about how to treat migrants. And to be honest, what we say for politics and for different countries, this goes also for the church. Because last week we have had a meeting in Austria, in Heiligenkreuz, where bishops came together from the countries of origin, the countries of transit, and the countries of reception. And it became obvious that in some countries, the bishops are very, very cautious to declare something like a culture of welcome, or where they would say, well, we do because we are Christians and we have to do something, but we would not promote the idea that migrants should come to our country. And we have seen this also when the last 2 weeks we have been forced at Commissary to withdraw 2 articles that were rather critical about the development in countries in Central and Eastern Europe, including their migration policy. So I would say at the moment there are real harsh times in Europe concerning European integration. Migration is a catalyst to this whole question of European integration, because the question of migrants and the different answers show the missing unanimity in Europe at the moment. We have to diversify. Countries like Hungary or Poland or so, they have the idea that they still have not met the standard we have in Western Europe, and they say, well, as long as we do not have the same standard, we should not be forced or we should not be asked to engage in the whole question of taking in migrants. And on the other hand, they have the idea, well, the migrants come mainly from foreign culture, a culture we are not so used to. And you also must say, because the migrants are mainly Muslims. You have a lot of people from civil society who are willing to welcome migrants, and they are open, they don't ask many questions. They just say, well, these are people in need, and we have to help them. On the other hand, we have to be honest that, of course, this type of a culture of welcoming, of course, has attracted a lot of people who might not be at first hand what we classically would classify as refugees, but people who say, well, we have seen that Germany is such a welcoming country, or that Sweden is such a welcoming country. Well, let's try to go there, and let's see if we also will have a better life there. And if people will detect that this is the case, then I am afraid that this kind of really open and welcoming culture might turn. And this is something we see at the moment in a country like Sweden or in a country like Germany. One of the elements I see, and I would say also for Catholic academics, would be that we need something like an open, non-biased discussion on the whole question of migration and asylum in Europe. As a church, we must not only have the strength to help people practically, but that we also must have the courage to address the different dimensions and the difficult elements that are concerned with this whole question of migration and asylum seekers. So to look how we can force in one way or the other our governments to do what they need to do concerning the United Nations. One of the reasons why the whole wave of people came at the beginning of September, because they saw no future in the camps in Jordan or in Lebanon, because we simply did not give the means the United Nations needed to keep the people there, to feed them, and to maintain schools for the children, and so on and so on. So we, for one reason or the other, we were not willing to pay the contribution we have promised to give for the reception of refugees in those countries. And the consequence was that those people did not see any future in those places, and they just started to come.